The handcuffs bit deeply into her wrists as the local sheriff sneered, tossing her into a concrete holding cell for having a bad attitude. He thought he had just caged another helpless out-of-town civilian. He was dead wrong. Moments later, a secure classified line from the Pentagon would ring his front desk, and his entire corrupt career would go up in flames. The Georgia heat was unforgiving, rising in shimmering, distorted waves off the black asphalt of Route 119. It was the kind of sweltering afternoon where sensible people stayed indoors with their air conditioning cranked high. But Evelyn Crow did not have that luxury. She was exhausted, having just finished a grueling multi-day stint in a windowless sub-basement of the Pentagon, coordinating a highly classified multi-billion-dollar logistical operation for the Department of Defense. At 48 years old, Evelyn was a woman who commanded rooms before she even opened her mouth. She was a major general in the United States Army, a decorated veteran of 2 overseas deployments, and one of the highest-ranking black women in the armed forces. But today, she did not look like a 2-star general. She had purposefully left the brass, the medals, and the rigid uniform behind. Dressed in a simple white linen blouse, faded denim jeans, and aviator sunglasses, she was just a woman in a rented navy blue Ford Taurus driving down to see her ailing aunt in Savannah. She was just passing through Oak Haven County, a sleepy, notorious stretch of jurisdiction known among locals as a speed trap. Evelyn had her cruise control set exactly to the 55 miles per hour speed limit. Her hands rested at 10 and 2. She was the picture of lawful driving, but as she crested a small hill, the aggressive glare of red and blue lights exploded in her rearview mirror. Evelyn let out a slow, measured breath. She signaled right, smoothly pulling the Taurus onto the dusty gravel shoulder. She put the car in park, turned off the engine, rolled down her window, and placed both hands firmly on the steering wheel. She had navigated war zones and faced down hostile foreign dignitaries. A rural traffic stop was not going to rattle her. In her side mirror, she watched the driver's door of the cruiser swing open. Out stepped Deputy Colton Briggs, a heavily built man in his late 20s, his hand resting casually on the butt of his sidearm. He swaggered toward her car, taking his sweet time, projecting a manufactured sense of authority. "Afternoon," Deputy Briggs said, leaning in slightly, his eyes scanning the interior of her pristine rental car. "Good afternoon, Deputy," Evelyn replied, her voice steady and perfectly modulated. "Was I speeding?" Briggs chewed on the inside of his cheek. "You crossed the solid yellow line back there about 2 miles, swerving a bit. You've been drinking." "I have not," Evelyn answered plainly, "and I have maintained my lane for the entirety of this drive." Before Briggs could respond, a second vehicle, an oversized matte black Dodge Charger outfitted with aggressive brush guards, screeched onto the shoulder directly behind Briggs's cruiser. The door popped open, and Sheriff Reed Calder stepped out. Calder was a local legend for all the wrong reasons. A man in his 50s with a thick neck, a sun-leathered face, and a silver star pinned to his tactical vest. Calder ran Oak Haven County like it was his own personal kingdom. He had a reputation for aggressive policing, particularly against out-of-towners who did not look like they belonged in his county. Calder ambled up to the passenger side of Evelyn's car, tapping heavily on the glass. Evelyn reached over and lowered the passenger window. "Problem here, Colton?" Calder asked, his eyes locked onto Evelyn with a predatory gleam. "Just asking the driver about her swerving, Sheriff," Briggs replied. "License and registration," Calder barked, not bothering with a greeting. Evelyn kept her movements slow and deliberate. "This is a rental vehicle. The registration is in the glove compartment. I'm reaching for it now." She opened the glove box, retrieved the rental agreement, and then pulled her civilian driver's license from her purse. She handed both across the console to Calder. She did not hand him her military ID. Protocol dictated she travel under a low profile, and she had no intention of throwing her rank around for a minor traffic stop. Calder scrutinized the Virginia driver's license. "Evelyn Crow. Long way from home, Evelyn. Where you headed?" "Savannah. Visiting family." Calder did not like her tone. It was too calm, too unbothered. Most people he pulled over were sweating, stuttering, terrified of the badge. Evelyn was looking at him with the mild, evaluating expression kin of a woman inspecting a poorly formatted spreadsheet. "Step out of the vehicle," Calder commanded. Evelyn did not move immediately. "Sheriff, for a simple lane violation, standard procedure is a citation. Is there a lawful reason you are ordering me out of the car? Calder's jaw tightened. The veins in his thick neck pulsed. The lawful reason is that I told you to do it. You've got a real attitude problem, lady. Now step out of the car before I pull you out. Aveline knew the law. Pennsylvania versus Mims gave them the right to order her out, even if the premise of the stop was fabricated. Arguing on the side of a highway was a tactical error. She calmly unbuckled her seatbelt, opened the door, and stepped out onto the gravel. She stood at 5'9", locking eyes with Deputy Briggs, who suddenly looked a little less confident. "Turn around and put your hands on the roof," Calder ordered, walking around the back of the car to stand right behind her. "I am not consenting to a search of my person or my vehicle," Aveline stated clearly, ensuring the dashboard camera of the cruiser caught her voice. "I don't need your consent," Calder snapped. "You're resisting a lawful investigation." "I'm standing exactly where you told me to stand. I am completely compliant. I am merely stating my Fourth Amendment rights for the record." That was the breaking point for Reed Calder. A black woman from out of state was quoting the Constitution to him on his highway. His ego, fragile and swollen by years of unchecked rural authority, shattered. He grabbed her wrists, twisting them behind her back with unnecessary force. "You're under arrest." "On what charge?" Aveline asked, her voice dropping an octave, cold as ice. "Disorderly conduct, resisting arrest. We'll figure out the rest at the station," Calder hissed, snapping heavy steel handcuffs onto her wrists and tightening them until they pinched her skin. "Let's see how much of that attitude you have after a night in a cage." They shoved her into the back of the sweltering cruiser. As the door slammed shut, Aveline Crowe sat perfectly straight. She did not cry. She did not scream. She simply calculated. Sheriff Reed Calder had no idea that he had not just arrested a civilian. He had just kidnapped a two-star general of the United States Armed Forces, and the Pentagon does not take kindly to its generals going missing. The ride to the Oak Haven County Sheriff's Department was silent, save for the crackle of the police radio and Calder's occasional smug chuckle from the front seat. Aveline stared out the window, memorizing the badge numbers, the radio call signs, and the layout of the town. Her mind operated like a supercomputer, logging every civil rights violation, every procedural failure, and every microaggression. The precinct was a depressing cinder block building that smelled strongly of stale coffee, pine sol, and damp concrete. Deputy Briggs hauled her out of the cruiser and marched her through the double glass doors. Behind the front desk sat Brenda, a middle-aged dispatcher with a headset resting over one ear, loudly chewing a piece of pink bubble gum. She barely looked up as Calder and Briggs dragged Aveline to the booking counter. "Got a live one today, Sheriff?" Brenda asked, popping her gum. "Oh yeah," Calder sneered, tossing Aveline's Virginia driver's license onto the counter. "Miss Aveline here thinks she owns the road, thinks she's smarter than county law. Process her, resisting, disorderly, and slap a reckless driving on there too, just for fun." Brenda sighed, hitting a few keys on her outdated computer. "Empty your pockets. Take off your jewelry." Aveline remained silent. Her hands were still cuffed behind her back. Briggs unceremoniously uncuffed her, grabbed her purse, and dumped its contents onto the metal counter. Lipstick, a wallet, a set of keys, and a heavy black reinforced smartphone. It was not an iPhone or an Android. It was a customized DoD-issued encrypted satellite device. Calder picked up the phone, turning it over in his hands. "What kind of burner is this?" "It is my personal property," Aveline said, her voice echoing in the small, dingy room. "And I'm invoking my right to a phone call." Calder laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You'll get your call after booking. Put her in cell 4. "Sheriff?" Aveline said, stepping forward. Deputy Briggs immediately put a hand on his holster, but Aveline did not flinch. "I am going to make my phone call now. If you deny me this, you are crossing a line you cannot uncross. I strongly suggest you hand me that device." Calder stepped right into her personal space. He loomed over her, trying to use his physical size to intimidate her. "Listen to me very closely. In Oak Haven, I am the law. I am the judge, the jury, and the king. You don't make demands. You speak when spoken to. Now get in the cell before I add assaulting an officer to your jacket." Aveline stared unblinkingly into his eyes. "Understood." She turned and walked herself into cell 4. The heavy iron door slammed shut with a clang, and the deadbolt slid into place. Inside, there was a metal toilet and a concrete bench. Aveline sat down on the bench, folded her hands in her lap, and waited. Out in the booking area, Calder was strutting. "Throw her phone in the lockbox. Leave her in there to cool off. Give her a few hours, she'll be crying for a public defender." Time passed. In the cell, Aveline remained entirely motionless. She used the time to meditate, slowing her heart rate, visualizing the operations she had left behind at the command center. She knew that back in Washington, automated systems were already pinging her encrypted phone. As a high-value military asset, her location was passively tracked. If she went completely dark or missed her scheduled check-in window, alarms would silently trigger in a secure room hundreds of miles away. At the front desk, Calder was leaning back in his chair, drinking a Diet Coke and laughing at a joke Briggs had just told. Suddenly, Calder looked toward the holding cell corridor. "All right, bring her the phone. Let's see who she calls. Probably some strip mall lawyer in Atlanta. Put it on speaker so we can hear it." Briggs walked down the hall, unlocked the heavy iron door, and handed Aveline the heavy black phone. "Make it quick. You've got 2 minutes." Aveline stood up. She did not dial a 1-800 number. She did not dial an Atlanta area code. She pressed a sequence of 7 numbers, bypassing standard commercial cell towers entirely, routing directly to a secure military satellite. The line did not even ring. It clicked instantly. "Watch center, officer of the deck," a crisp, hyper-professional voice answered. "This is Sierra Romeo Actual," Aveline said, using her operational call sign. "Authentication code Bravo 9er Tango 7. Briggs frowned, leaning in. "Hey, what is this? Who are you calling?" On the other end of the line, the voice immediately shifted tone, dropping all casualness. "Authentication confirmed. Go ahead, General. We have been trying to reach your transponder. Are you secure?" "Negative," Aveline replied calmly, staring directly into Deputy Briggs's confused eyes. "I have been unlawfully detained by the Oak Haven County Sheriff's Department in Georgia. I am currently being held in a concrete cell. My transport is compromised." "Copy that, General. Do you require kinetic extraction?" Briggs' face went completely pale. "General, kinetic extraction." "Negative," Aveline said. "Administrative intervention will suffice. Connect me to the Joint Chief's duty officer and patch in Undersecretary Bryce Kane." "Stand by, General. Patching now." Briggs backed away from the cell slowly. He turned and practically sprinted down the hallway. Sheriff Calder." Calder stood up, annoyed. "What is it, Colton? Who's she calling?" Before Briggs could stammer out an answer, the entire dispatch console lit up like a Christmas tree. Not just one line. Every single incoming line into the Oak Haven County Sheriff's Department began ringing simultaneously. The shrill, piercing sound filled the small precinct. Brenda, the dispatcher, dropped her gum. She stared at the caller ID screens. They did not show local numbers. They all read the same thing. Restricted U.S. Gov. "Answer it!" Calder yelled over the din. With a trembling hand, Brenda picked up the main line. "Oak Haven Sheriff's Department?" A voice on the other end, booming with the weight of the federal government, cut her off instantly. "This is Lieutenant General Quentin Hale, United States Army, calling from the National Military Command Center at the Pentagon. To whom am I speaking?" Brenda swallowed hard. "This is Brenda. I'm the dispatcher." "Brenda, you are currently holding a Major General of the United States Armed Forces in your facility. You have exactly 2 minutes to put the highest-ranking officer in your building on this phone, or I am contacting the governor of Georgia to mobilize the National Guard, and I will have federal agents kicking your doors off the hinges. Do I make myself clear?" Brenda's face drained of all color. She slowly held the receiver out toward Reed Calder. "Sheriff," Brenda whispered, her voice shaking violently. It's the Pentagon, for you." Calder's arrogant smirk melted off his face, replaced by a sudden, sickening wave of cold dread. He looked at the phone, then looked down the dark hallway toward Cell 4, realizing the catastrophic mistake he had just made. Sheriff Reed Calder had spent 22 years building an impenetrable fortress of local authority in Oak Haven County. He knew the judges, he intimidated the town council, and he operated with the absolute certainty that no one could touch him. But as his heavy, trembling hand took the plastic phone receiver from his pale dispatcher, that fortress began to crumble into dust. He cleared his throat, trying to summon the booming, gravelly voice of authority that usually terrified the locals. "This is Sheriff Calder. Who exactly am I speaking to?" "Sheriff Calder," the voice on the other end responded. It was not loud, but it possessed a terrifying, razor-sharp precision that made Calder's stomach drop. "I am Lieutenant General Quentin Hale. You are currently unlawfully detaining Major General Aveline Crow, a high-value asset to the United States Department of Defense. I want to be absolutely clear about your current situation. You have breached federal security protocols by seizing her secure communications device, and you have committed a felony civil rights violation under Title 18, Section 242. Calder gripped the edge of the desk. He looked frantically at Deputy Briggs, who was backing away toward the break room, looking like he was ready to bolt. "Now hold on a damn minute, General," Calder stammered, his arrogance desperately trying to mask his rising panic. "She was driving recklessly in my jurisdiction. She resisted a lawful—" "Do not insult my intelligence, Sheriff," Hale interrupted, his voice dropping to a glacial chill. "We have access to the raw GPS telemetry from her vehicle. We know her speed, her trajectory, and her braking patterns to the exact millimeter. We also have a live audio feed that was triggered the moment your deputy approached her window. You fabricated a traffic stop to harass a civilian, unaware you were targeting a commanding officer in the United States Army." Calder felt a cold sweat break out across his forehead. He could not breathe. The air in the dispatch room suddenly felt impossibly thick. "Here is what is going to happen next, Sheriff," Hale continued. "You're going to walk down that hallway. You're going to unlock Cell 4. You're going to return General Crow's personal property to her, untouched. And then you're going to sit in your chair and wait. I have just gotten off the phone with United States Attorney General Bryce Kane. A joint task force from the FBI and the DOJ Civil Rights Division is currently mobilizing from Atlanta. They are en route. If General Crow is not sitting in your lobby, unhurt and unhindered when they arrive, I will personally see to it that you are charged with kidnapping a federal officer." The line went dead. A dial tone echoed through the silent precinct. Brenda, the dispatcher, was staring at Calder, her eyes wide with sheer terror. "Reed, what did you do?" she whispered. Calder did not answer. He dropped the receiver so it dangled by its curly cord. He turned, his boots suddenly feeling like they were made of lead, and walked down the dim concrete corridor toward Cell 4. Deputy Briggs trailed cautiously behind him. "Sheriff, what did they say?" "Shut up, Colton," Calder hissed, his hand shaking as he fumbled a large ring of keys from his belt. He reached the heavy iron door of Cell 4. He slid the key into the lock. It turned with a heavy clack, and he pulled the door open. Inside, Major General Aveline Crow was sitting exactly where he had left her. Her posture was flawless. She did not look relieved. She did not look scared. She looked like a predator calmly watching a trapped rat. "General," Calder choked out, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. "There's been a misunderstanding. You're free to go." Aveline stood up slowly. She brushed a speck of dust from her white linen blouse. She walked toward the open cell door, but she did not step through it immediately. She stopped inches from Calder, forcing him to look her in the eye. "It was not a misunderstanding, Sheriff Calder," Aveline said, her voice smooth and carrying the lethal weight of an artillery strike. "It was an abuse of power, and your power ends today." She walked past him, stepping out into the main booking area. Calder and Briggs followed her like chastised children. "My property," Aveline demanded, holding out her hand. Briggs scrambled to the lockbox, his hands visibly shaking as he unlocked it and handed Aveline her purse, her wallet, and her encrypted phone. "Thank you," Aveline said coldly. She checked her belongings, ensuring nothing was missing. Then she turned to the dispatch desk. "Brenda, is it?" Brenda nodded frantically. "Yes, ma'am. I mean, General. Yes, General." "I need you to lock down your server room immediately," Aveline commanded. "No one accesses the dash cam or body cam footage from the last several hours. If a single file is deleted, you will be named as an accessory to the destruction of federal evidence. Do you understand?" Yes, locking it down right now," Brenda cried, furiously typing on her keyboard. Calder tried to regain a fraction of his dignity. "Now listen here, Crow. I'm letting you go. We can just call this a wash and you can get on down to Savannah. No harm, no foul." Aveline turned slowly to face him. A terrifying, knowing smile touched the corners of her lips. "Oh, Sheriff," she said softly, "I'm not leaving. I'm waiting for my escort." The next stretch of time was the longest of Reed Calder's life. Aveline did not pace. She did not taunt them. She simply sat in a hard plastic chair in the lobby, casually reading an old magazine as if she were waiting for a dental appointment. Her calm demeanor was utterly agonizing for Calder and Briggs, who were sweating profusely behind the booking counter, frantically whispering to each other. Calder tried to make a few phone calls to the local judge and the mayor, hoping his old boy network could shield him. But word had already leaked. The lines were either busy or his calls were sent straight to voicemail. The rats were already fleeing the sinking ship. Soon, the quiet afternoon was shattered by the roar of heavy engines. 4 matte black Chevrolet Suburbans, their tires kicking up gravel, swerved aggressively into the precinct parking lot, boxing in Calder's prized Dodge Charger. The doors opened in unison, and a dozen men and women in tactical gear and dark windbreakers poured out. The bold yellow letters on their backs read FBI and DOJ. The precinct doors flew open. Leading the charge was Special Agent in Charge Donovan Hale, a tall, severe-looking man holding a thick manila folder. Hale immediately locked eyes with Aveline. His stern face softened for a fraction of a second, and he offered a crisp, respectful nod. "General Crow, are you injured, ma'am?" Aveline stood up, tossing the magazine onto a side table. "I am uninjured, Agent Hale, just slightly delayed." "We'll take it from here, ma'am," Hale said. He turned his attention to the booking counter. The brief warmth in his eyes vanished, replaced by absolute, unyielding federal fury. "Read Calder!" Hale barked, his voice echoing off the cinder block walls. Calder stood up, trying to puff out his chest. "I'm the sheriff of Oak Haven County, and you boys are out of your jurisdiction." "Not anymore, Reed," Hale sneered, slapping the manila folder onto the counter. "I have a federal warrant for your arrest signed by a United States District Judge. Charges include deprivation of rights under color of law, false imprisonment, and tampering with a federal communications device. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." Calder hesitated. His hand hovered dangerously close to his duty belt. Instantly, 3 FBI agents drew their sidearms, aiming center mass at Calder. "Hands now," one of them shouted. Calder's bravado finally broke. He raised his hands in surrender, turning around slowly. Agent Hale stepped behind the counter, grabbed Calder's wrists, and violently snapped heavy steel cuffs onto them, the exact same way Calder had cuffed Aveline earlier. "Deputy Colton Briggs," Hale called out without looking up. Briggs jumped, his voice cracking. "Yes, sir." "You're named in the warrant, too." Hands on the counter. As the agents moved in to process the now-disgraced lawman, Hale walked over to Brenda, who was hyperventilating. "Ma'am, step away from the console. My cyber team is taking over this network. We are seizing all servers, hard drives, and communications logs." Within minutes, the Oak Haven County Sheriff's Department was entirely dismantled. Calder's badge was ripped from his chest. His gun was seized. He was paraded out of his own front doors, head bowed in shame, as a small crowd of curious locals began to gather on the sidewalk, filming the unbelievable scene with their cell phones. Aveline watched from the doorway as Calder and Briggs were shoved into the back of a federal SUV. The irony was poetic. Agent Hale walked up beside her. "General, we have a federal escort ready to take you down to Savannah. Your rental car can be towed." Aveline shook her head, pulling her aviator sunglasses from her shirt collar and sliding them onto her face. "No need, Agent Hale. I prefer to drive myself. I doubt I'll be running into any more speed traps today." Hale allowed a small smirk. "No, ma'am. I imagine the roads are going to be very, very clear for you." Aveline walked out to her navy blue Ford Taurus. She started the engine, the air conditioning roaring to life. She pulled out of the gravel lot, merging flawlessly back onto Route 119. She did not look back at the flashing lights, the arrested sheriff, or the shattered remnants of Oak Haven's corrupt regime. She just set her cruise control to 55, kept her hands at 10 and 2, and continued her drive. Can you believe the instant karma that hit Sheriff Calder? He thought he could bully anyone who crossed his county line, but he messed with the absolute wrong woman. If you loved watching this corrupt cop's empire crumble into dust the minute the Pentagon got involved, smash that like button and share this story with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more incredible real-life stories of instant justice. What would you have done in the general's shoes? Let us know in the comments below.